According to Chuck Schumer, the new compromise bill includes $430 billion in new spending on energy, electric vehicle credits, and health insurance investments. It more than pays for itself by raising minimum taxes for big companies and enforcing existing tax laws. Today, Biden said during a speech that the deal would, for the first time in a long time, restore fairness to the tax code and begin to restore fairness by making the largest corporations in America pay their fair share without any new taxes on people making under $400 grand a year. The bill would also impose a 15% minimum tax on corporations with profits over $1 billion, raising $313 billion over a decade. Companies could claim net operating losses and tax credits against the 15%. The U.S. corporate tax rate dropped 21% from 35% after a 2017 tax cut, but many companies pay much less than that, and some of the largest pay no federal taxes. There is a new stimulus update for beneficiaries of Social Security, Ssdi and Ssdi. $300 and is currently available for eligible beneficiaries to claim. Biden has a big announcement in regard to the economy, and here's the latest for stimulus news. Stimulus checks and relief payments are beginning to go out to several states across the country. Stimulus checks and relief payments are beginning to go out to everybody, and several states have announced new initiatives to deliver payments by certain groups. States providing relief include California, Florida, and Virginia, among others, and Social Security recipients and low-income households teamed up last week to introduce legislation to strengthen Social Security. The Protecting and Preserving Social Security Act aims to extend the program's ability to pay benefits. The SSA projects the program's combined funds will run out in 2035, at which point 80% of benefits will be payable. Democrats' proposal would extend that by bringing the depletion date to 2052, according to an analysis of the plan by the SSA. By the end of the projected 75-year period, it will reduce the federal deficit by about $12 trillion. The center said, "Every day I hear stories from seniors in my district about the importance of Social Security checks to the quality of life and the day-to-day survival. This bill will not only continue to help these life-saving benefits, but strengthen them for decades to come." Which is 13 years until Social Security's funds are projected to run out. Other Democrats have also put forward plans to extend that timeline while also making benefits more generous.
Emissions, prescription drug price reform, where Medicare will now be able to negotiate the price of certain drugs, an extension of Obamacare subsidies, money for IRS tax enforcement, and a tweaked corporate minimum tax, plus a 1% tax on stock buybacks, although its final form is still uncertain. Senator Sinema asked for changes as to how the package was structured. There's also money to address drought in Arizona and other western states, another of Sinema's conditions for support. So what happens now? With a razor-thin majority in the Senate, the Democrats need all 50 of their members to vote yay, not 60, since this is a so-called reconciliation bill and not subject to the 60-vote threshold to avoid a filibuster. But since this is Congress, it's far from a done deal. NBC's Julie Sirkin live on Capitol Hill with what happens next on both sides of the aisle. It's going to be a busy weekend, eh, Julie?
Yeah, Tyler, that's exactly right. You're smart to point out that until it's over, it's never really over in the halls of Congress. But the important thing that you said there is that this bill needs 50 votes to pass, and that's exactly what Majority Leader Schumer told reporters today he believes they're going to have. With Senator Sinema signing on after those changes, they now move on to the first vote, which is set to take place tomorrow at some point in the afternoon. That'll kick off the process, but that's just the beginning because they have 20 hours of equally divided debate between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans planning on making this as painful as possible for Democrats, bringing up amendment vote after amendment vote. That's according to Senator Lindsey.
The Joint Tax Committee is a bipartisan committee and reports on a bipartisan basis to questions asked by either party. We asked the Joint Tax Committee to give us these kinds of analyses, and on their bipartisan basis they did so. The first report that they handed out was one which we asked about where does the impact of these taxes fall. The administration has been very careful to say that, we aren't raising the tax rates of anybody under $400,000, but everybody in America knows that when taxes are charged, some people end up carrying the burden of those taxes. This tells us where that burden falls. That burden comes, by the way, because in the corporate tax field, the impact or the incidence of the corporate tax is passed on to workers, to capital, which means to those who own the stock, people trying to invest for their retirement in a pension plan or a 401k plan, and in price increases to the economy. The report found that in 2023, the very first year, the tax burden would increase by $16.7 billion on Americans making less than $200,000 per year. Another $14.1 billion will be borne by taxpayers earning between $200,000 and $500,000 per year. And during the 10-year period, the average tax burden would increase for nearly every income category. And when you get to the point at the end of the 10-year period, the entire burden, half to two-thirds of the entire burden of this new tax revenue would fall on those earning less than $400,000. That's the reality, regardless of the games that are being played in terms of describing what the taxes are on. The second report we asked for was where in our economy do these taxes fall? That was this report, which showed that 49.7% of those taxes will fall on manufacturers. And you can see from the chart that it goes across various other aspects of our economy. The point here is this bill will slam manufacturing. And I just point out, and I know my colleagues will get into this in a little more detail, I just point out that we worked as hard as we could back in 2017 to get our tax code amended so that we could incentivize capital formation in America, so that we could encourage all those hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars being held offshore to be brought back to the United States and invested here. And what we saw then was it happened. Companies came back to the United States, invested the capital. We got the strongest economy that we have seen in probably all of our lifetimes. Employment was up, wage increases were up, and the inflation rate was less than 2%, down around 1.5%. That's what was coming out of the effort to get capital formation back into the United States. This bill is going to slam it. There's one other aspect of this, talking about the manufacturing impact. The National Association of Manufacturers has indicated that because half of the impact of this tax will be on that industry, that this would be a reduction of our gross domestic product by $68.45 billion, a reduction of employment by 218,000 workers, and a reduction of employment income, worker income, of $17 billion. These numbers show very graphically where the burden of this tax falls, contrary to the arguments that this is just a tax on tax cheats. The bottom line here is that this